Steam fogged the edges of my glasses as I rushed between tables, balancing a half-empty coffee pot and a trembling smile. The diner smelled like burnt toast and cheap perfume, and the morning rush had already turned the place into a storm of noise. I had worked here long enough to blend into the background, to become the kind of girl no one remembered. That was the goal. Stay quiet, stay polite, stay invisible. It was safer that way. But that morning, invisibility betrayed me. I moved too fast, nerves tighter than usual, and the pot slipped in my hand. Hot coffee splashed across the table and onto the sleeve of a man's expensive suit. He froze mid-sentence, then turned toward me with a look that could have burned hotter than the spill itself. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped, shoving his chair back. The whole diner turned their heads. "Are you blind or just stupid?" I opened my mouth to apologize, but my throat locked. My hands shook, eyes darting between the puddle of coffee and the eyes staring at me. "I am so sorry," I said, voice barely a whisper. "I did not mean—" "Of course you did not mean to," he cut in, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "People like you never mean to. That is why you stay here, serving people who actually matter." Laughter rose from a nearby booth, small and cruel. My cheeks burned, but I forced myself to bow slightly, trying to fix what was left of the mess. "Please, sir, let me—" And then, it happened. A chair scraped against the tiled floor, slow and deliberate. The sound sliced through the noise like a blade. I looked up, confused, and saw him. He stood from the corner booth, tall, composed, wearing a black suit that did not belong in this diner. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, calm, commanding, dangerous. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "That is enough," he said. The man in the ruined suit turned toward him, annoyed. "Excuse me, this is none of your business." The stranger's gaze did not waver. "It became my business when you started talking to her like that." His tone was even, but the kind of even that made the air feel heavy. "You will apologize." The customer scoffed. "To her?" Silence spread across the room. Even the radio behind the counter seemed to fade into the background. The man hesitated, eyes flicking between the stranger's face and the cold authority behind it. His bravado cracked. "Fine," he muttered. "Sorry." It sounded forced, but it was enough. He threw some bills on the table and left, slamming the door behind him. The bell above it rattled against the glass. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The stranger turned to look at me, his eyes softened just slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked. I nodded too fast. "Yes. Thank you. You did not have to—" He tilted his head, studying me like he was trying to see past the apology. "No one should talk to you like that." The words were simple, but they hit harder than they should have. People had yelled at me before. People had insulted me, ignored me, pushed me aside. But no one had ever stood up for me. Not once. "I am fine," I managed, though my voice shook. I looked away, trying to hide the tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. He slid a bill under his untouched cup of coffee. "You are shaking," he said softly. "Take a break." I wanted to argue, to tell him I could handle it, but his tone left no room for that. There was power in it, a kind of quiet control that made everyone else fade away. He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he glanced back over his shoulder. "Be careful," he said. "Not everyone who raises their voice is dangerous." I frowned, not understanding what he meant, but he was already gone. The bell above the door chimed once more, and I stood there with the sound echoing in my chest. My manager mumbled something about cleaning up, but I barely heard him. My eyes drifted to the booth where he had been sitting. The black coffee he ordered was still there, untouched. Beside it, on the napkin, was a name written in neat, deliberate handwriting. Adrian Moretti. I stared at the name until the letters blurred. It sounded familiar, almost whispered from somewhere deep in memory. Then I realised where I'd heard it before. On the news, in late-night whispers, in stories people told when they thought no one was listening. They said that name with fear, and yet all I felt was a strange pull in my chest, as if the air itself had changed the moment he spoke. When he stood up for me, the whole diner went silent. I did not know it then, but my life had just changed. For 2 days after that morning, I moved like a ghost through the diner. Every sound felt sharper, every face more suspicious. The regulars came and went, gossiping about tips, weather, and broken cars, but my thoughts stayed trapped on one moment. The sound of that chair scraping, the quiet authority in his voice. Adrian Moretti. The name tasted dangerous even in silence. I had heard it whispered before, the kind of name people mentioned in low tones when they wanted to sound like they knew something but were afraid to. They said he owned half the city, that he was ruthless but fair. I had never believed those stories. People like that did not sit in small-town diners and drink black coffee. People like that belonged to another world, the kind built on money, silence, and blood. So why had he been there? Why had he defended me? I told myself he would never come back, that he had done his good deed and moved on. But on the third morning, just as I poured a new pot of coffee, the doorbell chimed, and the air changed. He walked in with the same quiet composure, wearing that black suit again. His presence drew every gaze in the room, but no one dared to stare for long. His eyes found mine before I could look away. I felt it, the strange pull in my stomach, like fear dressed up as fascination. He sat in the same booth as before. Without meaning to, I smoothed my apron and checked my reflection in the chrome of the coffee pot. My hands were shaking again. I forced myself to approach his table. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound normal. "Coffee?" His gaze lingered on my face for a moment too long before he nodded. "Please." I poured, careful this time, my grip steady, only because I willed it to be. "Busy day?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost gentle. It made the air feel heavier, not lighter. "It is always like this in the mornings," I said, keeping my eyes on the cup instead of his face. "People get impatient when they have not had their coffee yet." He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that did not reach his eyes. "Some people are impatient even after." I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded and tucked the coffee pot against my side. "Thank you again for the other day. You did not have to do that." "I know," he said simply. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. I glanced at him, surprised. "You do not seem like someone who enjoys attention," he added, studying me. I froze, unsure how to answer. "I am not," I said after a moment. "Attention usually means trouble." He tilted his head slightly. "That depends on who is watching." Something about the way he said it made my pulse jump. I looked away, pretending to wipe the table even though it was spotless. "You come here often?" I asked, hoping to shift the conversation. "Only recently," he said. "The coffee is average, but the view is interesting." I almost dropped the rag. "I am sure there are better places in the city." "There are," he said, his voice lowering, "but none like this." Silence stretched between us. The sound of clinking dishes and soft laughter from the counter filled the space, but all I could hear was my heartbeat. I did not understand what he wanted, or why I wanted him to stay. He finally looked away, glancing toward the window. "Do people here usually treat you like that man did?" I swallowed hard. "Sometimes." I try not to take it personally. Maybe you should, he said. You deserve more respect than that. The words struck me again, the same way they had that day. He spoke with such quiet certainty, as if he was stating a fact no one else had noticed. I tried to smile, but my voice trembled. You do not even know me. He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. Maybe I want to. For a second, I forgot to breathe. I could not tell if it was a compliment or a warning. Before I could answer, the bell above the door jingled again, and 2 men in dark coats stepped in. They nodded at him, not at me, and sat in the booth behind his. I saw the way their eyes scanned the room, assessing, guarding. Something about the way they carried themselves made my stomach tighten. They did not look like friends. They looked like shadows. He noticed my glance and said quietly, "They're not here for trouble." I nodded, though my throat was dry. "You have security?" "Something like that," he said. "It is a habit." His tone made it clear not to ask further, but my curiosity would not stop whispering. "Why did you defend me that day?" I asked finally. "You do not even know me, and yet—" His gaze softened. "Because I do not like people who think cruelty makes them powerful." There was something behind his word. This experience, regret, maybe even pain. I wanted to ask more, but he stood, placing a few bills on the table. "Keep the change," he said. "And be careful." "Careful of what?" I asked, but he was already turning to leave. As he reached the door, he stopped and looked back one last time. "Goodbye, Emma." I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. I had never told him my name. He said my name like it meant something, and I realized I never told him what it was. He came back the next morning. At first I told myself it was just coincidence. Maybe he liked the quiet, or maybe he was one of those men who stuck to routine. But when I saw him take the same booth at the same time with the same unhurried calm, I knew it was not an accident. Adrian Moretti had made a habit of showing up. He never called attention to himself, never demanded service, never looked impatient. He would sit, read the paper, drink his black coffee, and watch the morning unfold. Some days he'd exchange polite words with the regulars. Other days he'd simply watch me move, like the rhythm of the diner somehow steadied him. And maybe, in some strange way, it steadied me too. At first I avoided his gaze, terrified that meeting his eyes might mean something. But gradually it became harder not to. There was something about the way he looked at me. Not like he was studying me, but like he was listening even when I said nothing. By the end of the week, even my co-workers noticed. "Your mystery man's back," Jenna whispered, leaning over the counter. She was the kind of waitress who could turn anything into gossip. "He sits there every morning, doesn't say much, just stares at you like you're the sunrise." "Stop it," I said, rolling my eyes. "He's just a customer." "Uh-huh," she said, smirking. "A customer who tips like a saint and looks like sin." I tried to laugh, but my cheeks were burning. "You're imagining things." "Sure," she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee she hadn't paid for. "But if he ever asks for your number, you better tell me first. I'll need proof that this isn't some Mafia movie come to life." Her joke made my stomach twist. I'd heard the rumours, everyone had, but looking at him now, reading the paper with that quiet concentration, I didn't see a criminal. I saw a man who carried too much weight in his silence. Still, I couldn't deny what she said next. "He's dangerous," Jenna murmured. "You can tell by the way he doesn't need to say much. The quiet ones always are." I turned away before she could see my face, because she was right. And yet, somehow, that danger didn't scare me anymore. Later that morning, I brought him his usual. He looked up, offering that soft, measured smile. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied. "The usual?" He nodded. "You remember?" I have a good memory for coffee orders, I said, trying to sound casual. And names? He asked, his tone playful, but edged with something deeper. My hands froze around the pot. You seem to have a better one than I do. He set down his paper, his gaze holding mine just long enough to make my heart stumble. You looked surprised when I said your name the other day. I was, I admitted, because I never told you. He leaned back slightly. No, you didn't. I hesitated. Then how did you... He interrupted with a faint shrug. When you live the kind of life I do, you learn things. That sounds ominous, I said. It sounds true, he replied softly. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The diner around us faded, the clatter of dishes, the smell of coffee, even the low hum of the jukebox, until all I could feel was that steady calm that followed him everywhere he went. You shouldn't be afraid of me, Emma, he said quietly. I wanted to say I wasn't, but the lie caught in my throat, because fear wasn't too. He right word for what I felt. It was something heavier, warmer, more dangerous. Instead, I said, You shouldn't assume I am. That earned me a small smile, the first real one I'd seen from him. Fair enough, he said. The moment passed, but it left something behind, a quiet spark that neither of us dared to name. As the days passed, his visits became a rhythm I couldn't ignore. When he was there, I felt safe, though I could not explain why. When he wasn't, the diner felt too loud, too bright, too empty. One evening as I closed up, I found myself staring at the door, waiting for the bell that didn't ring. I told myself it was ridiculous. He was just a man, and I was just a waitress. But deep down, I knew better. He didn't come for coffee. He came for me, and I couldn't stop hoping he'd stay. I started noticing things I had not before. Adrian always sat with his back to the wall, never the window, never the door. He watched the room like someone expecting trouble, though his calm never broke. His eyes moved with quiet precision, studying every sound, every entrance, every unfamiliar face that walked in. At first, I thought it was just habit. Maybe he was a cop or a soldier, or someone used to living on edge. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized it wasn't habit. It was instinct. One morning, after the breakfast rush, I stepped outside for a breath of air and saw it. A sleek black car parked across the street, tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. A man leaned against it, hands clasped, scanning the block with the same kind of quiet vigilance Adrian carried. When Adrian stood to leave, the man straightened instantly, opening the car door before Adrian even reached the curb. That was the first time I understood that Adrian Moretti didn't belong in our small, quiet town. He was too controlled, too deliberate, like someone who lived by a code the rest of us didn't know existed. When he returned the next day, I tried to act normal, but curiosity gnawed at me. You always have someone waiting outside, I said, trying to sound casual as I poured his coffee. He looked up amused. Do I? You do, I insisted. Same car, same man. He never even looks away. Adrian's lips curved into a half smile. Maybe he just enjoys the view. Or maybe he's your shadow, I said, before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked to mine, not angry, but sharp enough to silence me. You pay attention, he said softly. I swallowed. Sometimes too much. He leaned forward, voice lower now. In my world, that can be dangerous. The words sent a chill through me, but his tone, calm, measured, almost protective, made it hard to tell if he was warning me or reassuring me. Maybe both. I forced a smile. Good thing this is not your world, then. He looked at me for a long moment before replying. You would be surprised how easily worlds can touch. The bell over the door jingled then, and he turned his gaze toward it, instinctively, before I even moved. Just a couple of teenagers laughing their way in. But I saw the way his shoulders eased once he was sure. That subtle shift, from alert to relaxed, told me more than his words ever could. Later that afternoon, as the sun began to fade behind the diner windows, I caught him on the phone. He was speaking quietly, in a tone I hadn't heard before, colder, clipped, like every syllable mattered. "No, not tonight," he said. "Keep him waiting. If he wants to talk, he will come to me." When he noticed me near the counter, he ended the call mid-sentence. His expression softened instantly, as if nothing had happened. "Everything all right?" I asked, pretending I had not heard. He nodded, slipping the phone into his jacket. "Just business." "What kind of business?" "The kind that doesn't belong in a place like this," he said. His honesty disarmed me more than any lie would have. He paid his bill, left a tip larger than usual, and paused before walking away. "Lock up early tonight," he said quietly. "It will rain." The sky outside was perfectly clear, but 2 hours later, as I mopped the floors, thunder rolled across the distance. By the time I stepped outside, rain had begun to fall. Soft at first, then harder, drumming against the pavement. I looked down the street and saw the same black car waiting by the curb. Its engine idled, headlights glowing faintly through the downpour. Adrian stepped out, umbrella in hand, and crossed toward me. "You should not be walking alone," he said, holding the umbrella above both of us. I tried to laugh. "You said it would rain, not that I would melt." He smiled faintly. "Still, some things are better kept safe." We stood there in silence for a moment, the rain pattering around us, his hand steady on the umbrella handle. There was something oddly comforting about his presence, a strength I could feel but not name. "Why do you come here?" I asked finally. He looked at me as if weighing the question. "Maybe I like the coffee." I shook my head. "You could have coffee anywhere." "Maybe," he said, eyes softening. "But not here." Before I could answer, the man from the car approached. "Sir," he said quietly. Adrian's expression changed, calm but alert again. He nodded to the man, then turned back to me. "Go inside, Emma." "Why?" "Because sometimes it is safer not to see what happens next." The way he said it made my pulse quicken, not from fear, but from something deeper, sharper. I watched as he walked back toward the car, the rain tracing silver lines down his jacket. He paused at the door, looked back once, and in that single look, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. The edge of a gun, glinting beneath his coat. And still, I wanted him to come back. The rain had not stopped since the night I saw the gun. Days blurred together in shades of grey, the diner lights reflecting off wet streets, the hum of passing cars fading into silence. Adrian had not come in since that night. I told myself it was better that way, safer, cleaner. But safety had never felt this quiet before. By the third night, the silence had teeth. I was closing up alone. The clock read 11:42 p.m. The last customer had left an hour ago, and only the faint buzz of the neon sign outside kept me company. The floor gleamed from fresh mop water. The coffee machines were off, and every table stood empty, except the one where he used to sit. I wiped it down slower than I needed to, tracing the spot where his cup would rest, as if touching memory itself. That was when I heard it. A faint scrape near the window. At first I thought it was just the rain, but then it came again, sharper this time, closer. I froze, eyes darting toward the glass. Someone was standing outside. A figure. Still. Too still. For a moment, all I saw was a reflection, my own pale face staring back. Then lightning cracked across the sky, and the flash lit everything. A man stood there, half hidden by the dripping awning. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his stare. My throat went dry. I reached for my phone with shaking hands and tried to sound steady when I whispered, "We're closed." The figure didn't move. Then, slow as shadow, he took one step closer to the glass. Something primal inside me screamed to run. I stumbled back, reaching for the counter, for anything solid. The lights flickered once, and when they came back, the man was gone. I locked the front door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every sound felt louder. The ticking clock, the rain against the glass, the faint hum of the refrigerator. I grabbed my bag and rushed to the back door, but stopped when I saw something there too. A faint shape in the alley, blue, red by the rain. It wasn't imagination this time. Someone was following me. I did not even think. My fingers found Adrian's number before my mind did. I hadn't called him before, had never dared. I wasn't even sure why I'd kept his card, folded neatly in my wallet. But in that moment, I needed him more than I needed air. He picked up on the first ring. "Emma?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the surprise. "Are you all right?" "There's someone outside," I whispered. "By the diner. I think he's watching me." "Are you sure?" "Yes," I breathed. "He was at the window, and now—" "Stop talking," Adrian said softly, but there was a tension in his voice I hadn't heard before. "Listen to me carefully. Lock every door. Stay away from the windows. I already locked the front. Do it again." I could hear movement on his end. Footsteps, the sound of a car door opening, the distant hum of rain through the receiver. "Adrian, I'm scared," I said, my voice trembling. "I know," he replied, "but I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me?" I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Yes." "Good. Do not try to leave. Do not look outside. I am on my way." His words were calm, but his voice wasn't anymore. I could hear the strain under each syllable, the kind that comes from barely controlled anger. Then in the background, I heard him say something, not to me, but to someone else. "Find out who was near the diner tonight. Now." The sound of an engine roared through the phone. I slid down against the wall, clutching the phone to my chest as if his voice could hold me. The minutes felt endless. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. Every shadow became a threat. I thought about how foolish I'd been, letting him into my quiet little world, believing that danger would stay at the edges. Maybe I had invited it in without even knowing. And still, all I wanted was for him to walk through that door. When the headlights finally swept across the windows, my chest filled with relief so sharp it almost hurt. I started toward the door, but then my phone buzzed again. "Emma," Adrian said, his voice low, urgent. "Do not open it for anyone until I say so." "Why? I saw your car." "Just lock the door and wait," he said, sharper this time. I froze. Because for the first time since I'd met him, his voice wasn't calm anymore. The moment he said those words, "Do not open it for anyone," the air in the diner changed. It was as if the walls themselves started to breathe with me, shallow and quick, waiting for something terrible to happen. Outside, the headlights I had seen flickered, then went out. The sound of the rain returned, heavier now, drowning out everything except the frantic pulse in my ears. I pressed my back against the counter, clutching the phone tighter, but there was no signal anymore, just silence. Then came the knock. It was soft at first, almost polite. Then again, harder, impatient. "Emma," a voice said through the glass. "It's me. Open up." It was not Adrian's voice. I stepped backward, shaking my head before my mind could even form the word no. The man outside moved closer. I could not see his face, just his outline in the dim streetlight. Tall, broad, wrong. "Come on," he said again, and something in his tone made my stomach twist. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." The back door rattled suddenly, followed by the metallic screech of something being pried open. My heart stuttered. He was not alone. I turned and bolted for the alley exit, not thinking, just running. The rain hit me in the face like needle, so I could hear footsteps behind me. 2, maybe 3. Heavy, closing in fast. My shoes slipped on the wet concrete as I turned the corner, desperate to find light, sound, anything human. But the alley stretched long and empty, walls closing in on both sides. The smell of garbage and gasoline filled my lungs. I heard one of them laugh. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't be out here alone." I spun around, breathless. The man from the window stepped forward, face half hidden under a hood. Behind him, another man blocked the way back. I was trapped. "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "I do not have any money." They exchanged a look that made my skin crawl. "We are not here for your money." The taller one reached for my wrist. I screamed, raw, loud, but swallowed quickly by the rain. I tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. The other one laughed again, moving closer. And then everything stopped. The growl of an engine cut through the storm. Tires screeched. A black car swung into the mouth of the alley, headlights slicing through the darkness. The men turned, shielding their faces from the light. The door opened. Adrian stepped out. No umbrella, no hesitation. Just that calm walk, the kind that made danger look effortless. But his eyes, they were not calm anymore. They burned. "Let her go," he said. The man holding me smirked. "This your girl?" Adrian did not answer. He just moved closer, slow and measured, like a man already deciding who would stop breathing first. The one behind me shoved me toward the wall. I stumbled, my hands scraping against the brick, and before I could turn, the sound hit me. The crack of a fist meeting flesh, sharp and final. Adrian's movements were not chaotic. They were controlled, terrifyingly precise. One man swung a pipe. Adrian caught it, turned it, and sent the attacker crumpling to the ground. The other tried to run, but Adrian grabbed his collar, slammed him against the wall, and drove his fist into his ribs once, twice, until the man went limp. I could not move. I just watched, rain mixing with the blood that stained the pavement. When it was over, the alley went quiet again, except for the sound of Adrian's breathing. He turned to me, chest rising and falling, his face half in shadow. There was blood on his knuckles, and something in his eyes I could not name. Fury, pain, and something dangerously close to tenderness. He walked toward me, slow enough for me to step back, but I didn't. My legs wouldn't listen. "Emma," he said, his voice low now, roughened by anger. "Did they touch you?" I shook my head, unable to find words. He looked at the men on the ground, then back at me. "You do not run alone again. Ever." His tone was not a request. It was a command. One that came from somewhere dark, somewhere violent. I stared at the blood on his hands, then at the way his fingers trembled when he finally reached for me. He took my face in his hands. Gentle, careful, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. "You should not have seen that," he murmured. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He paused for a long time before answering. "Someone you should stay away from." But his eyes told another story, one that said he would never let me go now. He looked down at his hand, wiped the blood from his knuckles against the rain, and whispered the words that would haunt me for nights after. "No one touches what is mine." The morning light felt wrong. It was too gentle for what had happened in the dark. I woke up on a couch I did not recognize, the faint scent of leather and coffee lingering in the air. My head throbbed. My hands were clean now, but I could still see the red when I closed my eyes. The rain washing over blood, the sound of fists striking flesh. For a moment I thought it had been a dream. Then I saw Adrian standing near the window, his shirt half unbuttoned, a bruise darkening his jaw. City behind him was just waking up. Horns, voices, the hum of life that kept moving no matter who bled the night before. He turned when he heard me stir. "You are awake." His voice was calm again, almost too calm. I tried to sit up, and the blanket slid off my shoulders. I was still wearing my clothes from last night, but someone, him probably, had draped the blanket over me while I slept. "Where am I?" I asked quietly. "My place," he said simply. "It was raining too hard to take you home." I looked around. The apartment was large but bare. Expensive furniture, glass walls, no colour. It looked like a place built for control, not comfort. He poured coffee into a mug and brought it to me. His movements were slow, deliberate. No trace of the man who had broken bones hours earlier. "Thank you," I said, though my voice shook. He studied me for a long moment. "You are afraid of me now." I wanted to deny it, but the truth caught in my throat. "I saw you hurt them," I whispered. "I saw what you did." "They would have hurt you," he said. "I stopped them." "But you could have called the police." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that made my stomach tighten. Not arrogance, not guilt, just certainty. "The police do not protect people like me," he said. "And they do not protect people close to me either." I lowered my gaze, staring at the coffee trembling in my hands. "I am not close to you." He gave a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. "You are now." The words settled between us, heavy and final. We ate in silence, or tried to. There was toast, eggs, too much quiet. Every scrape of silverware made me flinch. He noticed. "You should not have been there alone," he said after a while. "It was just work," I replied. "I close up every night." "Not anymore." His tone was soft but absolute. "I will have someone drive you home, or I will do it myself." I looked up at him then, really looked. The bruise on his jaw, the faint line of blood at his wrist, the calm expression that did not match the violence I had seen, and beneath it all, the part that frightened me most. I wanted to touch him, to understand him. "Adrian," I whispered. "Who are you, really?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair, watching me like he was deciding how much truth I could handle. "A man who keeps promises," he said finally. "Even the dangerous ones." His phone buzzed then, breaking the fragile silence. He looked at the screen, his jaw tightening, and I saw the world outside my own reflected in his eyes. A world of commands, loyalties, debts that bled into lives. When he looked back at me, something had changed in his face. A kind of decision. "You do not need to understand," he said quietly. "You just need to trust that I will protect you." I wanted to ask the question that burned in my chest. Protect me from what? But I never got the words out. Because the way he looked at me, I could not tell if he was warning me or himself. He said he wanted to protect me, but from whom? Or from himself? I should have felt grateful. After all, he saved me. Instead, I felt like I had stepped into someone else's life, and the door had quietly locked behind me. The next day, Adrian insisted on driving me to work. His car was a black Mercedes, the kind that made people glance twice before realizing they should not be staring. The seat smelled of leather, and something faintly like danger. He drove in silence at first. No music, No small talk. Just the hum of the engine and the soft rhythm of rain against the windshield. His hands rested steady on the steering wheel, elegant, controlled. But I remembered how those same hands had turned brutal in an alley not long ago. When we stopped at a red light, I caught sight of 2 cars behind us, dark tinted, windows, identical make. They moved when we moved. "Are they following us?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He did not look over. "They work for me." It took a second for the words to settle. "You have people following you?" He smiled faintly. "Not following. Protecting." Protecting. The word sounded noble, almost comforting, until I realized it meant he had reasons to need protection. By the time we reached the diner, I was no longer sure which world was mine. The chipped tiles, the smell of burnt coffee, the chatter of early customers, all of it felt smaller, duller somehow. Like I had left the real world for a dream made of glass and secrets. Adrian walked me inside, his presence drawing every pair of eyes in the room. My manager stopped pretending to wipe the counter. My co-workers exchanged glances, whispering, and for once I did not blame them. He did not belong here, not with that watch, that coat, that silent authority. "You don't have to walk me in," I murmured. He looked at me with that calm, unshakable confidence that could turn any word into a command. "I know." And then he left. Just like that. But the whispering did not stop all day. By evening I was too restless to sleep. When my phone buzzed with an unknown number, I already knew it was him. "Come downstairs," his voice said. "I want to show you something." Every instinct told me to say no. But curiosity, or maybe something weaker, won. Outside, a different car waited, bigger, sleeker. Inside, the world changed again. The ride led us through streets I had never seen. Quiet, guarded, lined with walls too high to see over. When the gates opened, I felt the air shift, like I had crossed a border. His house wasn't a house. It was an estate, a fortress made of marble and silence. Men stood at the entrance, earpieces glinting in the light. They nodded as we passed, eyes forward, never questioning. I followed Adrian through hallways too wide, rooms too perfect. Everything looked expensive, but not alive. "Do you like it?" he asked. I hesitated. "It's beautiful. But it doesn't feel like anyone lives here." He laughed softly. "That's because they don't. Not really." He poured wine into 2 glasses and handed me one. "You are thinking too loudly," he said. "I'm just trying to understand," I admitted. "What you do. Who you are." He studied me for a moment, and I felt stripped bare under his gaze. "Understanding me is dangerous," he said. "Even I don't always understand myself." I looked around again. The quiet security, the power in every detail. "You must have worked hard for all this." His expression changed, something darker flickering in his eyes. "Worked, yes. Fought, more often. I have done things no decent man should. But that is the price of keeping control. In my world, if you don't make the rules, you live by someone else's. And that never ends well." There was no pride in his voice, just fact, just truth. He sat across from me, elbows resting on his knees, the light catching the scar along his wrist. "People think money buys freedom," he said quietly, "but it doesn't. It buys silence. It buys fear. And sometimes, it buys loyalty, if you're lucky." I wanted to ask if he was lonely, but something in his face told me not to. Instead I asked, "So why me? Why bring me into this?" He looked up then, eyes softening in a way that disarmed me completely. "Because you don't want anything from me," he said. "And that makes you dangerous too." I did not know what to say. He reached over and touched my hand. Just briefly, but it felt like a promise and a warning all at once. "Everyone pays a price for love," he murmured. "I just didn't know mine yet." I told myself it was just a phase, a dangerous fascination that would fade once the fear did. That if I stopped seeing him, stopped answering his late-night calls, stopped replaying the sound of his voice in my head, I could go back to who I was before. But you cannot unsee a man like Adrian Moretti. You cannot unfeel the way the world bends when he looks at you. For a while, I managed to stay away. I threw myself into work, took extra shifts, pretended the whispers about the man in the suit didn't still echo behind me. My co-workers had stopped teasing and started warning. "He's trouble," they said. "Guys like that don't just disappear." I laughed it off, but their words found me anyway, especially on quiet nights when the diner was empty and I caught myself glancing at the door, half hoping to see him standing there. He didn't come. Not for days. Then weeks. And somehow, that hurt worse than the danger ever did. I told myself it was better this way, that I needed distance, that his world wasn't mine. But every time I saw a black car pass by, every time I heard a voice that sounded like his, my heart betrayed me, leaping towards something that wasn't there. One night I closed up alone again. The neon sign buzzed, flickering in the window's reflection. I wiped the counter slower than usual, listening to the rain outside. When I turned to lock the door, he was there. Adrian stood across the street, half hidden by shadow and mist. No car this time, no bodyguards, just him, watching me like a ghost who hadn't decided if he wanted to be seen. My breath caught. He crossed the street slowly, the rain gliding down his coat. And when he stepped under the awning, I realized he looked different, tired, colder somehow, like someone who had been fighting invisible wars. "I thought you forgot about this place," I whispered. "I tried," he said simply. The way he said it, like it cost him something, almost undid me. He looked around, then at me. "You shouldn't be here this late anymore." I smiled faintly. "You told me that before." "And you didn't listen before." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. There was no anger, only resignation. He wasn't scolding me. He was saying goodbye. "What happened?" I asked softly. He exhaled, glancing at the empty street. "Things changed. I had to make choices. People noticed what they shouldn't have." "You mean me?" He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. "Adrian," I started, but he shook his head. "You have a quiet life," he said. "Keep it that way. Don't let me ruin it." I stepped closer, ignoring the voice in my head screaming to stay away. "You didn't ruin it, you made it dangerous," he finished for me. "That's what I do." Rain dripped from his hair, his collar, his eyelashes. I had never seen him look so human. And it broke something inside me. "Then why come back?" I whispered. He hesitated, just long enough for me to see the truth flicker across his face. Something raw, something real. "Because I wanted to make sure you were safe," he said finally, "even if it meant reminding myself that I can't be the one keeping you that way." My throat ached. I wanted to tell him that I didn't care, that safety meant nothing without the strange calm I felt when he was near. But the words wouldn't come. So I just stood there, heart pounding, rain pounding harder. He reached out, brushed a strand of wet hair from my face. His fingers lingered, barely, and then fell away. "Take care of yourself," he said. And before I could speak, before I could ask him to stay, he turned and walked into the rain. He didn't look back. Not once. I stood there long after he was gone, staring at the street where his shadow had vanished, telling myself I had done the right thing, that it was better this way. But as the silence closed in, I realized something cruel. I wasn't afraid of losing him anymore. I was afraid I already had. He walked away first, but it felt like I was the one leaving everything behind. The message came on a Thursday morning, folded neatly beneath the diner's back door like a delivery someone forgot to claim. At first I thought it was a receipt, or a lost note from the night shift, until I saw my name written across the front in clean, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, standing behind the counter, smiling faintly, caught mid-conversation with a customer. The image was grainy, but unmistakable, taken from outside the diner window. A note was scrawled across the bottom in red ink. Tell him to choose. For a long time, I just stared at it, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the hum of the coffee machine. My fingers went cold. The air felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. Someone had been watching me. I locked the back door, double-checked it, then checked again, though I knew it would not help. Whoever left that note had already been close enough to take my picture. By noon I could not focus on anything. Every face in the diner looked unfamiliar. Every car that passed by felt like it slowed down too long. I was still holding the note in my apron pocket when a man walked in, tall, suited, and silent. He was not Adrian, but something about the way he carried himself made the world around him quiet. He approached the counter, eyes scanning the room once before landing on me. "Are you Elise?" My throat tightened. "Who wants to know?" He slid a small card across the counter, black, embossed with a crest I did not recognize. "I work for Mr. Moretti." Adrian. The name alone made the world tilt. "Why are you here?" I asked, though I already knew it was not for coffee. He spoke softly, his voice calm but edged with tension. "There has been a situation. You may have received something this morning." I froze. He saw the flicker in my eyes and nodded slowly. "Then you understand why I am here." "What does it mean?" I whispered. He looked at me with something almost like pity. "It means they know who you are." The words cut through me. "Who are they?" He glanced toward the window, lowering his voice. "People who believe hurting him starts with hurting you." I felt my stomach twist. I am not part of his world. He leaned closer, his gaze steady. "You are now." The words hit like a verdict. I stepped back, shaking my head. "This is a mistake. I do not know anything about what he does. I do not even—" "You do not have to," he interrupted. "They only need to think you matter to him." I swallowed hard, my breath catching in my throat. "So what happens now?" He looked down briefly, then back at me. "You stay somewhere safe. He will contact you soon." "Where is he?" I asked. "Does he know about this?" "He knows," the man said. His jaw tightened. "He has been trying to stop it before it reached you." I wanted to ask more, but the sound of a car outside drew his attention. He looked over his shoulder, his hand brushing the inside of his jacket, a gesture that told me everything I did not want to know. "Go home," he said quickly. "Lock your doors, and if you see anything strange, do not call the police. Call me." He placed a phone number on the counter, no name, just digits written in a neat, precise hand. Then he was gone. The diner felt colder after he left. I turned the note over in my hand again, my reflection trembling in the glossy surface of the photograph. Tell him to choose. Choose what? Choose who? The light outside began to fade, the neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. I shut off the lights, locked up early, and walked home through the empty streets. Every shadow looking like it knew my name. That night, I left the photo on the kitchen table, unable to throw it away. I stared at it until the ink seemed to move, until the red letters almost looked wet. It was not a warning. It was a promise. They sent a photo of me at work. The note said, "Tell him to choose." I did not sleep that night. I waited for a call, a knock, a sign that any of it meant something more than a cruel reminder that I had stepped into a world where feelings were liabilities. But by morning, all I had was silence. When Adrian finally showed up, it was not like before. No soft glance, no calm presence that made me forget to breathe. He looked different, sharper, colder, like a man who had already decided which parts of himself to kill. He closed the door behind him, and the sound echoed through my small apartment. "You are safe now," he said. Safe? I laughed, though it came out closer to a sob. They sent me a photograph, Adrian. They knew where I worked, where I lived. How is that safe? He looked at me, unreadable. It is handled. Handled? I stepped forward, my hands trembling. Do you hear yourself? You sound like you're talking about a business deal, not me. His jaw tightened. This is what I was trying to prevent. No, I said, voice breaking. You were trying to protect your empire. You did not want your enemies to see your weakness. The girl who poured coffee and thought you were human. For a long moment he said nothing. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating. Then he turned away, his eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the window. You do not understand how this works, he said quietly. Then explain it to me, I demanded. Explain why I was dragged into something I never asked for. Explain why I had to be the message they sent. He looked back at me, and for the first time I saw guilt flicker behind the calm. Because they wanted to know what mattered most to me. And you let them, I said, my voice trembling. You let them use me. He took a step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. If I had fought back the way I wanted to, you would be dead. Something inside me cracked. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the truth hurt more than any lie could have. So you chose them, I said. You chose this. Your business, your blood, your rules. You chose all of it over me. He did not deny it. He just said, You will understand when you see what I have done. The smell of smoke reached me before the screams did. I was closing the diner, wiping the last table the way I always did, when the lights flickered. For a second I thought it was a power cut. Then the window shattered. The world erupted into chaos. Flames licked up the curtains. Glass rained down from the ceiling, and the sound of gunfire cracked through the night like thunder. My body froze before my mind could catch up. Someone was shouting my name. I think it was one of the cooks. And then I saw them. Shadows outside. Men with guns. I dropped to the floor, crawling behind the counter as heat clawed at my skin. The air turned thick, choking. My lungs burned. And in the middle of it all, I heard his voice. Stay down! Adrian's voice was raw, commanding. No trace of the calm I once knew. I tried to move toward him, but the fire was everywhere. Adrian! I screamed. He appeared through the smoke, his coat torn, face streaked with ash. He grabbed me, pulling me to my feet, and I saw the fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. I told you to stay away, he said, coughing. I tried, I cried, my voice breaking, but you always find me. He half smiled, the kind of smile that breaks before it forms. Then let this be the last time. Before I could ask what he meant, Another explosion ripped through the back of the diner. The blast threw us both down. My ears rang. I could not hear anything except the rush of my heartbeat. He lifted me, shielding me with his body as debris rained around us. "Adrian, you are bleeding," I said, my hands slick with blood that was not mine. He leaned closer, his voice trembling for the first time. "You were the only thing I ever wanted to keep safe." "Do not say that," I whispered. "You are coming with me." But he shook his head. "No, you have to run." "I am not leaving you." He kissed my forehead, quick, desperate, final. "Then forgive me for making you." The fire roared behind us as he pushed me toward the shattered doorway. I stumbled into the cold night air, coughing, gasping, and then turned back just in time to see him disappear into the smoke. He carried me out of the fire and did not come back. The fire burned for hours. They said the building was gone before the firefighters even arrived. I remember standing across the street, wrapped in a blanket, watching what used to be the diner collapse into glowing ash. People spoke around me, police officers, paramedics, reporters, but their voices were muffled, distant, like I was underwater. All I could hear was the echo of his last words. They told me no one could have survived inside. I nodded as if I understood, but something inside me refused to accept it. Grief has a strange way of numbing time. Days blurred into nights. I went back to work eventually, at another place, in another town. But every time I heard the hiss of an espresso machine, I remembered the way he said my name, like it meant something. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for an empty seat in front of me, half expecting him to walk through the door again. Calm, unshaken, pretending nothing happened. But the world stayed quiet, and in that silence, I began to realize how much had changed. The timid girl who once apologized for existing was gone. The one who trembled under insults, who kept her head down, who thought strength belonged to men like him. She burned in that fire too. Now, when I walk home at night, I do not look over my shoulder. I carry the memory of a man who showed me how to stand up, even if he did it by breaking everything around him. I hated him for it, and I loved him for it too. They said Adrian Moretti was dead, but deep down I knew better. Some debts do not die that easily. It happened on an ordinary evening, the kind that never expects a miracle. The sky was soft with fading gold, and I was locking up the café when I saw the shadow on the glass. My heart stopped before my mind caught up. I turned slowly, half convinced my memory was playing tricks again. He stood there, alive. Adrian looked nothing like the man I remembered, yet everything about him was still the same. His eyes carried that same quiet gravity, but now there were scars across his jaw, faint reminders of the fire that should have taken him. He looked older, tired, free. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The world around us seemed to vanish. The sound of cars, the hum of the streetlights, even the air between us. He took one slow step forward, and I could see the question in his eyes before he even said it. "You thought I was gone," he said softly. "I buried you," I whispered. "At least I tried to." He gave a broken smile. "I burned it all down. The business, the men, the blood. I had to end it before it ended you." I stared at him, the ache in my chest caught between disbelief and forgiveness. "Why come back now?" He looked down for a moment, then met my eyes. "Because I wanted you to know. I am free now." His voice cracked slightly as he added, "But only if you still want me." The wind carried the scent of rain and something else. Possibility. I did not answer him right away. I just stepped closer, close enough to see the truth behind the ruin. He was not the monster I had feared or the saviour I had worshipped. He was just a man, flawed, scarred, and somehow still mine. And for the first time, the silence between us felt like peace. The new diner smells of fresh paint and roasted coffee beans. The walls gleam in soft cream tones. The windows open wide to the morning light. It is smaller than the one that burned, quieter too. But maybe that is why I chose it. I wanted peace, not crowds. I wanted something that felt like starting over without pretending the past did not happen. When I pour coffee now, my hands do not shake. I do not rush to apologize when I make mistakes. I smile, I breathe, I speak without lowering my eyes. People notice, and sometimes they ask if I ever worked anywhere else. I just say yes, and leave it at that. The bell above the door jingles, and I glance up. He walks in like a shadow that learned how to carry sunlight. Adrian. No suits, no guards, no traces of the man who once ruled everything with silence. Just him, in a worn jacket, his scars softened by time. He takes a seat at the counter, right where he used to. I grab a mug and pour him a cup, steady, unhurried. You still take it black? I ask. He smiles, faint but warm. You remember? I remember everything, I say quietly. Even the parts I wish I could forget. He studies me for a moment, then nods. I do not blame you for that. Some memories are meant to change us, not comfort us. I lean on the counter, the same way I once did when I was too shy to meet his eyes. So, I ask, teasing softly, what brings a man like you back to a place like this? His gaze meets mine, steady and calm. A promise, he says. I told myself if I ever walked away from that world, I would find the girl who taught me what it means to have one. For a heartbeat, neither of us speaks. The hum of the coffee machine fills the silence, and for once, it feels like music. He reaches for the cup, brushing my fingers lightly. You rebuilt this place, he says. No, I reply. I rebuilt myself. He nods slowly, as if that was the answer he came for all along. When he leaves, the doorbell chimes again, and I watch him fade into the morning crowd. My chest does not ache anymore. It feels full, alive, steady. I turn back to the counter, wipe a small spill, and smile at the steam curling from the coffee pot. They still whisper about that night, when a shy waitress spilled coffee and fate spilled everything else. But I do not whisper anymore.